Hey guys, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the 5 must-have things on your precision rifle, and I'm going to throw in an extra little thing at the end, so be sure to stay tuned. Now in the Go Long Range series, we've covered lots of things from reticles to rifle scopes to truing up ballistics to how to use your ballistic calculator, lots of things we've talked about so far. But in this episode, I kind of want to take it back a little bit and talk about setting up your rifle and the top things that are must-have things on your long range rifle. Now it's important to note in this episode that there are lots of things that I recommend to have on a long range rifle, especially if you're gearing towards a match setting. But I want to talk about more general things or key characteristics that all precision rifles or quote-unquote precision rifles should have. These are going to be characteristics or things that can be found on any rifle, whether it be a gas gun like this, to a match gun that's right behind me, to a hunting gun like this Sig Cross. All of them have these same things in common. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What makes them precision rifles, and what are those key things that make your life as the shooter a lot easier. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead, let's get started. Now when talking about this list, I want to start from the rear of the gun and move our way forward. And number 1 being an adjustable buttstock. What I mean by this is have the ability to change the length of pull on the rifle and the comb height. Now why this matters is that these things need to fit you as the shooter. Now when you buy, let's say a factory gun like a Ruger American or a Bergara Ridge or whatever you're gonna buy, both of those are perfectly fine rifles. But for the most part, those are designed to fit the average shooter, the average size person, and really aren't optimal for you specifically. And that's really what matters. For me as a shooter, I need this rifle to be dialed in to fit me like a glove. Think of this like a suit. Now you could go to, let's say JCPenney or wherever you buy suits, and you can just buy a coat and a pair of pants, and that would be fine. You know, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But when you go to a tailor and you have a suit fitted for you, that suit isn't just gonna fit anybody. It's meant for you. They take measurements of you. They take measurements of how long your arms are, how big is your chest, how tall are you, how long are your legs, what's your inseam, and they design that suit to fit you specifically. That's essentially the advantage to a stock that's modular or that can always adjust. Now, this can be found on a stock or a chassis system, doesn't really matter, but it's important to know that if you're serious about getting into precision shooting, you have these adjustments on your gun. The reason why this is one of the most important things is because if it doesn't fit you perfectly, you're gonna find yourself straining and working against the system, and you're gonna find yourself tiring out faster, and it's just not gonna be comfortable. And that's the key thing. When you get into position, it's extremely critical that you as a shooter are at a natural, calm, relaxed state. If you as a shooter have to push your neck really far forward or really far back, or get your shoulders out of square with the rifle, all of those things are going to hurt your core fundamentals when it comes to trying to shoot a precision rifle. You really want to make sure that you as a shooter are square perfectly behind the rifle, that you are relaxed, that when you get into position, you're not having to strain and your muscles aren't having to tense or work at all. When you get into position, it's just relaxed and comfortable and fits you just like a tailored suit would fit you. When you as a shooter become comfortable behind your rifle, you as a shooter will be the most precise that you can be, and that's what really matters. Number 2 is going to be the grip. Now I much prefer a vertical grip like you see here, rather than let's say a Monte Carlo or a really swept back style, let's say traditional hunting rifle, that the grip is really swept back and it's just not as comfortable. The advantage to a vertical grip is mainly the trigger control. When talking about the trigger control, a vertical grip is going to make it a lot more consistent for me, the shooter, to get a proper trigger placement on the trigger shoe and have even pressure. So, yet again, it's a clear rifle, but when I get behind the rifle, as you can kind of see, my trigger finger is 90 degrees when it's in contact with the trigger shoe. Or so let's say a Monte Carlo or a swept-back style hunting rifle, my hand will kind of be at this weird awkward angle where I'm trying to pull the trigger perfectly back, but my hand isn't perfectly perpendicular to the trigger, so I'm dealing with weird angles and it's not super comfortable. Worse so, if I have a vertical grip, I can get behind the rifle and I can evenly put pressure on this trigger at 90 degrees, which is super nice. There are lots of precision rifle trainers out there like Philip Vallejo who talk about this and reference back to the 90 degrees of trigger control and how when I come in at 90 degrees, it's gonna make it a lot more advantageous for me, the shooter side, to get a consistent trigger pull. Because yet again, that's what it's all about. And in the game of precision rifles, we're talking about mainly me as a shooter needs to be consistent. Consistent in the way that I pull the trigger, consistent in the way that I grip the gun, consistent in the way that I put pressures, consistent in the placement of my shoulder to rifle connection. Everything needs to be consistent shot to shot, and that's how I become more precise. So to me, a vertical grip is really important for me as a shooter to be consistent and yet again, back to being comfortable again. So number 3 is going to be the rifle scope. Now we've already made an entire episode dedicated to rifle scopes and what I recommended on rifle scope, so I don't want to go too much down that rabbit hole again. It's really crucial that you as a shooter have a really good rifle scope that's going to be well set up for precision shooting. Characteristics that you're looking for in a scope, at least in my opinion, are something that's going to be probably external turrets so you can quickly dial for your shots. A reticle that is usable on the inside, that's actually going to give you measurements, not just be a traditional duplex style reticle or a BDC style reticle, but a reticle that actually tells you information. How many MOA or mils are certain things so that you actually can use it as a ruler and not just something to aim with. Other key things that you should have on your rifle scope are things like a bubble level so that you can actually make sure your cant is perfectly true. That can play a big factor when talking about shooting extended ranges. You should have a parallax knob on the other side of you so that you can adjust parallax so it's perfectly in focus and you're parallax free. And on top of that, you should adjust where your rifle scope is positioned so that it meets with your length of pull. Your rifle scope position and your length of pull kind of play together. Get your length of pull set where it needs to be at, where it's comfortable, and then move the rifle scope forward and back until your eye relief is absolutely perfect. Yet again, so that when you get into position, everything is perfectly crisp and everything's beautiful and everything just lines up how it's supposed to, and you're not having to fight the system. If you're having to fight the system and you're having to use muscles to move things back and forth, it's wasted energy for one, and it's gonna tire you out faster rather than using all of your energy to focus on what's happening downrange. Number 4 would be cartridge selection. And that's kind of a controversial topic. Some people are gonna have different opinions. But the reason why I bring this up is because I see a lot of newer shooters getting into precision shooting and they overgun themselves. They think, well, I've got to shoot 1,000 yards. I've got to get a 300 Win Mag or something crazy. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with 300 Win Mag. But it's going to be really hard for you as a new shooter to be able to get behind a big gun like that, a big Magnum cartridge, and be able to drive that gun consistently. You have to keep in mind, or at least a lot of times, I'm shooting by myself. So that means that me as a shooter, I have to be the one to shoot the gun, to watch where my trace is going, see my impact, measure my adjustment, and then make the correction. So I have to do all this by myself. And if I'm shooting a big old cartridge, then I'm gonna go off and, crazy far distances, have all kinds of recoil, and not even have a clue where I'm hitting at. Well, what advantage is your big cartridge then? What advantage does a big cartridge have if I can't see my impact? And that's a really big, crucial thing that, especially getting into it, you need to learn how to do. And it's really hard to learn how to drive a gun when you're going straight to a big Magnum. I would highly recommend, as far as a cartridge goes, if you're sticking 1,000-ish yards and in, get a short action, whatever it may be. Get a 6.5 PRC, get a 6.5 Creedmoor, get a 308, get a a something, get a 243, get a 6mm Creedmoor, get a 6.5x47. It doesn't matter. There's 5 billion good short action cartridges out there. Pick one and run with it. But don't overgun yourself. You're just gonna be shooting yourself in the foot and wish you hadn't done that. It sounds really cool until you go to the first range trip and you can't see your impacts and you're fighting with yourself and you're getting mad at the gun, and all reality it's just because you just can't see your impacts. So make sure you pick a cartridge that makes sense for you. Like I said, I recommend a short action something. If you want a short action cartridge that will still be able to kill whatever at a pretty far distance, like I said, I recommend like the PRC line, that 6.5 PRC would be an amazing cartridge for that, while delivering a kind of softer recoil impulse that will be still pretty easy to get behind the gun and drive it consistently and see those impacts. The last thing, number 5, is going to be some sort of muzzle device. Now, you don't, yet again, have to have a muzzle device, but I would highly recommend get a muzzle device that's going to work for you. Something like a brake like this. Now granted, this is a match style brake, so it's pretty big, humongous 4-port brake. It's an Area 419 Sidewinder. So it's designed to really throw a lot of gas and really mitigate that recoil. So yeah, it's a little bit overkill, at least if you're talking about a hunting situation, but a match style rifle like this, it really makes my life as a shooter a whole lot easier. But you don't have to have a big brake like this, but put something on the end, your job easier as a shooter to drive the gun and to see your impacts. That's what truly matters. You can even run something like a suppressor, and it will also help quite a bit, something better than bare muzzle. Usually for me, I'm either going to run suppressed or I'm going to run a muzzle brake. That's kind of the two options I'm going to do, but I'm gonna have something on the end of this barrel that's going to be doing some sort of work for me. Now, a suppressor isn't going to mitigate recoil as much as a muzzle brake, but it will do quite a bit. It's a whole lot better than nothing, and it's gonna be a lot quieter, so it's gonna be a lot more enjoyable to shoot. There are times where I almost find myself shooting better with a suppressor than I will a muzzle brake, because the recoil impulse is a lot different. It's kind of hard to compare what recoil is like a muzzle brake versus a suppressor. A muzzle brake is more of like a soft pop. It's kind of all of a sudden, and then it's kind of over and done. Or so a suppressor is kind of a soft push that when I shoot a rifle that's suppressed, it kind of pushes me. That's really not hard at all, but it's kind of a drawn out push rather than just a really short little pop that a muzzle brake gives me. A muzzle brake is a lot better. If I'm trying to get as many impacts on steel as possible, I'm going to be running a brake for 100%. I will say from a shooter standpoint, however, I enjoy shooting suppressed more, but like I said, if all I'm trying to do is get as many impacts on steel as possible, a muzzle brake is the better option. But for hunting, I typically use suppressors, or if I'm just having fun and just practicing, I'll typically still use a suppressor, but a muzzle brake is still a phenomenal option. The biggest thing is just get something on the end of the barrel that's doing something for you, that's helping you out, and not just something that's just bare and not doing anything. This is something that's going to help me, and it's not really costing me anything as far as skill-wise. It's throw something on the end of the barrel and all of a sudden it's a whole lot easier. Why would you not put something on the end of the barrel? Why would you not put a brake or a suppressor or something on the end that's going to help you out, make your job easier? So those are the top 5 things that I'm going to recommend on your precision rifle. And as we can see, I brought out a couple different platforms that kind of show that these are going to be the same characteristics on every precision rifle, no matter really what it is. I've got 3 different platforms out there, from a match gun that I had earlier, to a kind of a precision AR, to my SIG Cross that's like a lightweight hunting gun. But they all share those same characteristics. They both have an adjustable stock on the rear of the gun. They both have vertical style grips. They both have scopes that are going to be good for their intent. They're both in cartridges that are really good. ARs in 223, the Crosses in 6.5 Creedmoor. Both of them make sense for the job they're going to be doing. ARs for more predator hunting, having fun, kind of a little plinking gun. The Cross, more of kind of a lightweight hunting gun that can kind of do anything. So they're both in cartridges that kind of make sense for their use case. And on the end, I have a suppressor on both these guns, because to me, both of these are hunting guns. I use them both for hunting, But yet again, we see the consistency of those 5 things being across the board on every rifle. Every rifle for me are gonna have those 5 things. It's gotta be adjustable for either shooter. It's gotta have some sort of vertical grip so it's more comfortable and easier for me as the shooter to be able to drive it and have good trigger control. It's gotta have some sort of good scope on it. It's gotta be in a cartridge that makes sense for the use case. And it's gotta have some sort of muzzle device that's gonna make sense. Now, in the beginning of the episode, I talked about how I was gonna give an additional thing that a precision rifle must have. And it's simply ammo. Now, before you click off the video and think this is just some big old clickbait, wait just a second. What I mean by this is that you need to be able to afford good quality ammo to continually feed your gun. Make sure you're feeding your rifle quality ammo and not just the cheapest stuff you're finding at Walmart or at your local gun store. Buy something that's going to be made quality and meant for precision shooting. And make sure you're getting out there and actually practice and not just sitting on the couch watching a bunch of videos, not ever going shooting but once a year. Now, I know that sounds harsh. I'm not trying to be mean, but all I'm simply saying is make sure you invest into some good quality ammunition. Keep in mind that you should be stocking up quite a bit and going to the range somewhat frequently. That's really what's going to make you a better shooter, not buying the latest chassis or the highest in scope or all these fancy things. But when it comes down to it, it's going out to the range, picking up some ammo, and doing some practice that's really gonna make you a better shooter. Not the latest cartridge, not the latest scope, not the latest chassis. And trust me, I'm as much as a gear nut as anyone else. I love buying new things. I have lots of nice things that some of you guys have seen. And so I myself fall victim to this. But when you go to buy that next piece of gear, would you be a better shooter by taking at least half the money of whatever that is for a new chassis or scope, whatever that amount of money is that you put aside for that? Would you be a better shooter and would you learn more if you took half that amount of money, invested it into some ammo and got some practice in? Oftentimes you'll find that you'd be better off doing that than buying the latest Leupold Mark IV or whatever else has come around. And even I myself ask those same questions. When I go to buy a new thing, I have to remind myself, would I gain more on buying another 8-pound keg of powder or buying another 1,000 primers and buying another 1,000 bullets and practicing more? Or would that piece of gear actually help me? Now, I'm not saying don't buy gear. That's not what I'm saying. This whole video is based upon things that you should buy to make your life easy. But just be careful and don't get sucked down the rabbit hole of the latest and greatest thing and always chasing after that latest piece of gear that you need. Investing into good gear is really important and really crucial at getting good at the sport. But more important than that, investing into ammo for your practice time is more important than buying the latest thing. Well, guys, that's it for this episode. Hopefully I was able to help some of you out there. Let me ask you the question. What are your 5 must-have things for a precision rifle? Did I miss anything? Did I get anything wrong? Do you disagree with me? That's perfectly fine. Drop it down in the comment section below. Let's have our conversation. Let's learn together. That's really what this is all about. Us learning together on this journey. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you can be notified when we're going to drop the next video. But until then, I'll catch you guys in the next episode.